Hey, what's up guys? Gons here with this week's word of encouragement. It comes from Matthew 12, verses 38 through 40. Here's what it says. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. But he answered and said to them, An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now this is Resurrection Sunday. I understand that some people believe that we shouldn't be participating in Easter because it represents Ishtar, the fertility goddess. But in my opinion, a lot of Christians are in fact celebrating the resurrection of Christ, not Ishtar. And while you can choose not to participate in Easter egg hunts and stuff like that, I think we ought to follow what's written in 1 Thessalonians 5:11, 1 Corinthians 14:26, Romans 14:19, Jude 1:20, and other places where it talks about building each other up. And so taking on that principle, I want to go through this passage that talks about Jesus prophesying about his death and burial and what he had planned to do as the greatest sign from God. So here we see the scribes and Pharisees ask the teacher that they want to see a sign. But really here, their desire to see a sign wasn't really to be convinced that he was the Son of God, but rather it was to speak against Jesus because they thought he was the spawn of Satan pretty much. So regardless of any kind of sign Jesus would have shown, and he did show many with many miracles, they just wanted to express another way to reject him. But then Jesus answered and said, An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. In other words, Jesus condemned their seeking after a sign, especially, again, when he had performed countless signs already, right before their eyes. But instead, Jesus prophesies about the greatest sign when he said, And no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now again, Jesus is referring to the greatest sign, which is his resurrection. Jonah was a prophet in a sense beyond just preaching to Nineveh in his time. His entire life was a prophecy of the death and resurrection of Jesus. In the same way Jonah gave his life to appease the wrath of God coming upon others, Jonah didn't die and was freed after 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish. Now one thing that's really interesting about this is the idea of going to the center of the earth. Now there's another passage that talks about Jesus descending to the lower earthly regions, and you can find that in Ephesians 4. But the word here for center of the earth is cardia, and it means literally the heart, mind, character, inner self, will, intention, or a literal center. Now there are different views about what he did down there, one of which is that basically he went to gather those who were in Abraham's bosom. And there's a whole study you can get into with that. But in effect, the encouragement here comes from the fact that Jesus Christ resurrected from the dead. Now, if anyone here resurrects from the dead in 3 days without any hospital help or anything like that, you would consider that pretty miraculous. But he did it not just for show, but he did it as part of the redemption process for all mankind. And so this is ultimately the greatest encouragement that comes from biblical Christianity and the core of who Jesus is and why he came, why he died, and why he resurrected. It was to free humanity from the bondage of sin. So there's really nothing else that could be more uplifting and more encouraging than this message here. And I chose this passage from Matthew because I think it's a resurrection passage that's overlooked often in the fact that Jesus went down to Sheol, not just to free those in Abraham's bosom, but to tell all of the entities, demonic, fallen angels, otherwise, that are there, that they have been defeated. Those who followed Satan no longer had the ultimate authority, and Jesus was taking it back. And in fact, the act of baptism, of going underwater and coming back up, represents this very act of Jesus going down into Sheol and then rising again in resurrection. So I hope this encourages you into not just the fact that he rose, but some different areas of study that you can really get into based on the word and the reasons why Jesus went down to the center of the earth as part of his death, burial, and ultimate resurrection when he ascended again. Hope you have an awesome week. God bless.